What if one simple brushstroke could give you enough ideas to create 100 different watercolor flowers? Well, I decided to put that idea to the test. I ended up creating 74 different watercolor flowers using just that one simple brushstroke. And I'm pretty convinced I could go all the way to 100. I'm going to show you 3 variations that change what this stroke can become. So go grab a brush and come paint with me, because by the time we are finished, you won't know how to paint just a flower, but create hundreds of flowers on your own. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I have here my watercolor supplies, including paints, water, and a paper towel. I will also pull out some brushes really quickly. I'll be using some of my Craftamo brushes today. You can of course use whatever you have on hand, but we are going to be wanting some round brushes. I'll pull out a number 10 round, a number 6 round, and a number 3 round. But like I say, you can pull out whatever you have on hand. Any size of round brush will work. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, maybe I will also pull out the rigger brush as well to use for some stems after we paint the flower heads. And as a side note, these brushes are available and in stock, so I will leave a link for those in the description of this video, along with links and information for any of the other products you see me using today. All right, for our paper, you can pull out whatever you happen to have on hand. Even scrap pieces of paper will work if you're just practicing. I actually just got this new little watercolor pad that I'm really excited about. It's fairly small, just under 5-inch square block. I've shown before that I save all of my scrap pieces of paper to practice color mixes or brush strokes or ideas on all the time. So I plan to keep this right on my desk to be able to use for that. It is just the right size. The brand of this is Flunbrato. Hopefully I'm saying that right. They just sent this to me recently to try out, and I have to say, I think I'm in love. It's bound on 2 sides, so it holds the paper down to prevent some warping, and then there's an opening where you can slit and cut the paper off easily. There's 80 sheets, so it should last a good long time. It's 100% cotton cold pressed paper. I've already played around with a bit, and I really do love this. I'll put a link for this in the description of this video, and for a short time, you can use the discount code Liesl010 to get 10% off. Again, this will be listed in the description of this video for more info. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and get to painting. Like I say, we are going to be focusing literally on one brush stroke to paint in these flower petals today. It's very simple to do. I don't think it'll take much time for you to get the hang of it, and the possibilities are endless. I'll just start with the number 10 round brush here, maybe pull out a little bit of blue paint. You can pick whatever color you'd like, though I think the trickiest part to painting in these brush strokes is to get the right consistency with your water and paint, which we will go over in just a minute. But before you begin the stroke, really roll your brush around in that paint so you get it clear up into the belly or the larger part of the bristles. Then for the basic brush stroke, all you're going to do is take the tip of your brush and slightly start to press down and then pull that brush out. And yes, folks, that is actually all there is to it. So let's do another one. Hold the tip of your brush at the paper, start to press down and pull out. Of course, you can pull this stroke farther out to make longer petals or keep it short, just whatever you'd like to do. That is the beauty of this brush stroke. Now, I may have had a little bit too much water in my mixture because, as you can see, I'm starting to get some uneven drawing in here with some hard lines or darker spots. Now, there are a few ways you can help stop this from happening. A better ratio of water to paint can help. Having slightly more paint than water so it's not too runny. You can also literally just take the tip of your brush and smooth that out just a little bit so it dries more evenly. You'll also notice that some of these strokes have more jagged or uneven edges. A lot of times I actually like that jagged end look because it seems more natural, but that's totally up to you. But let's talk paint consistency. Let me add some extra water into my paint here just to show you what can happen if you have way too much water in the mix. When you start pulling and pressing down, you're going to end up with some pretty big puddles within that stroke, which then creates those hard lines and blooms when it's trying to dry, because obviously the outside edges where the puddle is not going is going to dry faster than where the puddle is. Something that can really help with that is after you've rolled your brush around in the paint, simply dab your brush off onto a paper towel to get off some of that excess water and paint. Then when you go to paint your brush stroke, you're not going to have quite as much puddling as before. And like I say, you can always come in here and kind of smooth that out if you need to. Now, once again, this is what your brush stroke might look like if you have too much water in the mix, but there's another problem that can occur, and that is not having enough water. If your paint is too dry, when you go to press down on your brush, it is simply not going to spread out or create that nice teardrop shape. As you can see here, it's just not as pretty and as clean. The edges are really rough. The stroke can sometimes look a little splotchy, and it's also harder to paint on as well. Now you can make different sizes of these strokes. You can pretty much just stamp your brush down to create a really small brush stroke, or you can pull that brush out and as you're pushing down, create a longer stroke. Another option is to combine 2 or even 3 of these together to create a wider or thicker petal as well. This is just a few options that you have with this, but it's a great start. So finding the right consistency and balance is probably the most tricky thing to this brush stroke, but after you practice that a little bit, you'll kind of get the hang of that. And like I say, if you start seeing some big puddles in there, that's probably a good indicator that you may have too much liquid. Now let me just cut this little practice piece off here to show you a couple more things that can change things up. You of course can use different sizes of round brushes as well. This is a number 6 round brush. Let me just load this up here with some pink paint. But you'll notice I can paint the same type of brush stroke even with this, but the petals will be a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more thin. You can of course combine 2 or 3 of these together to create some thicker petal shapes. If you combine 2 or 3 together, you can even leave the ends a little bit more rough or create different types of petals altogether. But again, this is just using that same basic stroke. This is just pressing down or basically stamping the brush, which also creates those smaller strokes. We really have a lot of options here. Then let's go ahead and pull out a number 3 round brush as well. You can see that we can pretty much do that same thing even with a very small brush. Now, I do get people telling me that they have trouble getting theirs to work, and they think it's because the brushes they have are not like the ones I'm using. My Craftamo brushes are more on the professional side and can be a bit more expensive, but you definitely can do this with cheaper brushes, so I'm going to show you that here as well. I have 2 brushes that I used to use all the time before I had my Craftamo brushes. One is an Artegeria brand and one is a Meeden brand. But let me show you this Artegeria brush first, starting with the tip, pushing down and pulling out, and it's still creating a nice petal shape. It holds enough paint and water in the bristles that I can paint several of these strokes without even having to reload. I think one of the biggest keys to making this work is to have a brush that has a nice point to it. Otherwise, instead of a teardrop shape, you're going to end up with more of an oval. Now, moving on to the Meeden brush, I probably like this one better than the Artegeria actually. It's got a little bit of a nicer point to it. They create some thinner petals, but if I combine the 2 strokes together, I can still get a really nice looking petal shape here. I really recommend just pulling out a few different types of brushes, both brands and sizes, that you can test out and find what works for you. It's also not a bad idea to just take a scrap piece of paper and practice this brush stroke on over and over so you can get the hang of the movement as well as the paint consistency. So now that you know the basic stroke, I'm going to show you how versatile this is in helping you create tons of different flowers. I actually have 3 ways in which we can paint this brush stroke that really gives us some flexibility and creativity on how we can use them. So make sure you stick around so you can see all 3 ways. For our first way, I think I'll pull out the number 6 round brush and start with maybe some Gamboge yellow paint. Of course, you can choose whatever color you like because this is a part of the versatility with this. I'll go ahead and just make those simple strokes in a semicircle shape to create a flower that is shown at a side-facing view. Basically, our first method is just painting in these brush strokes in the same way that I've been showing you so far. This is the easiest and quickest way to paint in these petals and flowers. Let's try another flower using the same method. I might change my colors just a little bit by using some cadmium orange, alizarin crimson, and maybe some gamboge to create sort of a peach color this time. I'm going to combine 2 of these brush strokes together to create some thicker petals, and why not try painting them all the way around in a full circle this time. Terrific. Let's try one more idea here, again using the same brush and the same stroke. This time maybe I'll just do 4 petals in a side-facing view. I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. I've been really excited to share this with you. Practicing a basic brush stroke and still being able to create beautiful flowers is terrific, not only for beginners, but even if you're an experienced painter. You can challenge yourself a little bit, expound on the idea, maybe come up with different variations on how to use it or paint with it. But either way, if you find you are enjoying this tutorial, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. Isn't this fun? Look at what we've been able to create. Already we have 3 different types of flowers using the exact same brush stroke. And in the next 2 techniques, I'll show you how you can change this up even more. But then, of course, to finish these flowers off, we can add in centers to the flowers as well as stems. So I may pull out the number 3 round to kind of finish this up. Again, this is another variation that you can choose. You can do yellow centers, green centers, black centers, literally whatever you want to try. I'll probably pull out the rigger brush here as well when it gets time to paint in those thin stems. I think I'll just use some olive green today, but again, there are some variables that you can do with that as well. Other variations you can add to these flowers to change things up a little bit are also different types of leaves. I'll show you a few just to get some ideas flowing, but we can try some thin branch-like leaves using the rigger brush. We can pull out a number 3 round or a number 6 round and paint in some long grass-like leaves, or we can paint in some common leaf shapes as well, just whatever you'd like to try. Okay, we did go through that fairly quickly, but like I say, all of these are going to be similar in concept. So let me just cut this out really quick and I'll show you another full sheet of these similar types of flowers using the same technique just to give you more ideas on here of how you can use this brush stroke. You can see I have flower stalks with small petals. I even have a singular large brush stroke that can create a flower bud. All of these have slight variations of size, color, angles, the amounts of petals used, etc. All these things are what help us create hundreds of variations of flowers, even though we're using the same basic stroke. I filled this entire page with different ideas, so I hope you'll give some of them a try or maybe come up with some of your own. But let's go ahead and move on, and I'm going to show you another variation or way in which you can use the same brush stroke but make it look different. Okay, I'll start with just a little bit of quinacridone pink paint to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and start this flower in the same way as we've been doing, creating maybe 4 petals using that double brush stroke and making this flower in more of a side-facing view. Now, before I continue on to help show you the next technique for this, I do need to let these dry. So while we wait, let's go ahead and start creating a second flower that we can try out as well. Maybe this time I'll use some ultramarine blue, and with these ones, I think I'll try making more of a flower stalk. So in my mind, I'm visually keeping an idea where that center stem line might be, and I'll begin painting in these brush strokes alongside that. While we wait for that to dry, we might as well go ahead and start on a third flower over here. I'll paint these brush strokes just slightly larger, but very similar to the last ones we just did. I'll connect 2 or maybe 3 of these together to create the singular flower head. Okay, good enough. Now is where we get to the fun part. We are going to try a layering technique over these flower petals to create a very fun and different sort of look. So I'll come back to this first flower now that it's completely dry, take some of that same pink paint color, and then paint in another flower petal or 2, overlapping some of the ones already on the page. Look how fun that is. Because watercolor has an awesome transparency to it, this can really create a neat transparent look within the flower petals, giving it a little bit of extra dimension. This technique takes a little bit more time to do than the first set of flowers I showed you, just because we do have to wait for a little bit of drying time. But it really wasn't too bad because I could move on from flower to flower going around the page. Very good. All that's left to do is finish this off with a little bit of detail. So using my number 3 round and some olive green paint, I'll add in the base of the flower heads as well as the flower stems and some leaves. And feel free to use a variation of all of these things to make each flower unique. Now, in hindsight, I may have arranged these slightly different, but I think you get the idea. In fact, let me pull out my full sheet of flowers that I painted using the same brush stroke and this transparent technique so you can get some more ideas here. Again, even though I'm using the same concept, they all look slightly different from one another. I've got buds, I've got droopy flowers, and this one I even did a bleeding heart idea, which I really love. But again, we're just changing up the sizes, the colors, the amounts of petals, etc. to make each one unique. And my friends, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is actually not all. I do have one more technique to show you that you can use with the same brush stroke to change things up even more. So this time, maybe I'll pull out a number 10 round to make some larger petals here. I'll try a yellow or an orange color for this one. And then something I'm going to do is maybe even designate 2 brushes to 2 different colors. I'll keep the large brush that's going to be painting the main petal as the lighter paint color, and then I'll use a smaller brush, maybe the number 3 round, and designate that to a darker color, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But I'll go ahead with this number 10 round and paint a couple of petals, and then the trick is, while they are still wet, which you have to do fairly quickly because they can dry out fast if you're not careful, I'll take the number 3 round brush with the darker paint color and dab that at the very center part of the flower petal, and then I'll let that spread into the petal a little ways. If you don't drop in that darker color while it's still wet, it can have a harder time spreading, so if you need to, you can wet and dry your brush off and use a damp brush to help that a little bit. Basically what this is doing is creating even more depth to our flower petals, helping them not look quite so flat and making them look a little more realistic. realistic. The fun thing about this technique is that you can use it on either the first or second variation of the brushstroke that I showed you. I can have some regular brushstrokes that don't overlap and still add this contrasting color in to make them look a little bit more fancy, or you can even do this with that transparent variation as well. I'll try a little bit of both here so you can see each way. With this last flower, I'm going to try painting it sort of a red or red-orange color using some alizarin crimson as the darker contrasting paint color. Then after all of these are completely dry, we can come back in and add in the greenery both at the base of the flower heads as well as the stems and leaves. The fun thing about these flowers is that they are fairly simple and easy to do. They don't take a lot of time, and you could even paint them into cards, bookmarks, or even a larger painting, maybe trying to add a vase at the bottom of them like they're being held in it, or a wildflower field. There really is a lot of possibilities here. It just takes some creativity. Now let me pull this little painting off and I will show you the sheet that I painted using this variation. I have on here some that are transparent, some that are overlapping, as well as some that are not. But all of them have this darker center color. In fact, you can even use a different color than the petal for the contrasting color. This one flower is yellow, but then I used pink for the center contrasting color, and it created a really neat look. So you can kind of just experiment around with this and find some cool combinations. Now, like I say, I've painted a ton of these flowers just practicing, filling sheets of them, trying out different combinations of things. And with these 3 cards I painted today, along with my 3 full sheets of paper, I counted 74 flowers. And although I'm using the same technique, the same brush strokes, they all look slightly different. I really hope you'll pull out a sheet and give some of these a try. It is so much fun, and I feel like anyone can do this. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.